The story begins with a woman named Iris mourning the loss of her son, Matto. The only keepsake she has left is a small toy boat that once belonged to him. Unable to sleep, she decides to go for a drive to calm her troubled mind. Eventually, she abandons her car and continues on foot toward a place filled with memories, a memorial site dedicated to her son. There, she notices his initials carefully carved into a tree. The sight plunges her into deep despair, and as she nears the edge of a cliff, her thoughts turn to ending her life to be reunited with Matto. At that critical moment, a man named Richard appears. Gently, he tries to dissuade her, sharing his own painful experience. He reveals that he once suffered severe trauma following a car accident that claimed the life of his former girlfriend, Chloe, a tragedy that left him hospitalized and unable to move for over 2 months. In response, Iris opens up about the heartbreaking loss of her son, who died after being left unattended while playing. Their shared sorrow creates an immediate and profound emotional connection, and Richard does his best to convince Iris that even in the depths of despair, life still holds hope. After their heartfelt conversation, they bid each other farewell, both seemingly finding a small measure of solace. However, as Iris prepares to leave, Richard senses she may have reconsidered her decision. Together, they walk back toward her car, but just as she's about to enter, Richard unexpectedly blocks the door. Moments later, he retrieves an umbrella and, without warning, uses it to threaten her. Forcing her into his car, he binds her securely. When Iris awakens, she finds herself captive inside Richard's vehicle, her hands tied. Desperate, she attempts to use her smartwatch to call for help, but Richard assures her it's useless. He even returns the toy boat to her, as if taunting her. Fueled by desperation, Iris takes matters into her own hands. She finds a knife and carefully frees herself from her restraints. In the struggle, she causes the car to swerve off the road and crash into a tree. A fierce scuffle erupts inside the vehicle, and both she and Richard are thrown from the car onto the ground. In the chaos, Richard reveals that he injected her with a drug that will fully paralyze her body in 20 minutes. Determined to escape, Iris makes a frantic attempt to flee. However, her struggle accelerates the injection's effects. Richard follows behind her, calm and relentless, as she realizes her strength is rapidly fading. Setting a timer for 20 minutes, Iris pushes forward, though each step grows heavier and more labored. With no other options, she seeks refuge in a secluded hiding spot. For a moment, Richard loses her trail, but as she lies in silence, ants begin crawling over her face. Unable to endure the discomfort, she lets out a small cry, instantly revealing her location. Realizing she has been discovered, Iris retreats into the water. Though she isn't a strong swimmer, she surrenders to the current, which carries her toward a nearby tree. Clinging desperately, she uses her arms to stay afloat as her legs fail her. The relentless countdown continues. In her paralyzed state, Iris can do nothing but listen and watch helplessly. As she lies there, motionless, the sound of an approaching engine fills the air. She closes her eyes in resignation, only for the noise to suddenly stop. At that crucial moment, a man named Bill appears and offers assistance. Seeing no immediate reaction from Iris, he gently turns her over and moves his finger in front of her eyes, testing if she can still see. Iris manages to blink once for yes and twice for no, signaling that she is still conscious. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, Bill carefully carries her home despite the difficulty. Not long after their arrival, a knock is heard at the door. Iris, unable to speak, blinks repeatedly, desperately trying to signal Bill. As he opens the door, Richard stands there, calmly claiming he was in a car accident and is searching for his wife. Bill politely asks Richard to wait outside while he goes inside to fetch a telephone. Seizing the opportunity to further his deceit, Richard pretends to feel unwell and asks to borrow the phone, claiming he lost his own. In an attempt to build trust, he casually asks Bill if he lives with his wife, subtly fishing for clues about Iris's whereabouts. Bill responds that his wife passed away from a heart attack and admits he hasn't been entirely truthful. As the phone rings, Bill hesitates, giving Richard the chance to improvise. Richard pretends he has found Iris and claims she might be at a warehouse. However, when he tries to approach the location, Bill shoves him, causing him to fall against a bookshelf. Using the opportunity, Bill quickly calls for help, sparking a fierce struggle. As they grapple on the floor, Richard finds a knife and launches an attack, stabbing Bill in the leg and stomach until he is left helpless. Certain that Bill can no longer move, Richard searches the warehouse but finds no sign of Iris. Determined to erase any trace of her, he decides to set the entire house on fire. Meanwhile, Iris has taken refuge behind a bed, with only her fingers still capable of movement. As Richard douses the room with gasoline, the slight twitch of her fingers catches his attention. Noticing a trail of blood beneath the bed, he realizes she is hiding there. He sets the fire ablaze and exits, returning to his car. However, as he starts the engine, something makes him reconsider. Changing his mind, he returns to retrieve Iris, placing her in the front passenger seat. At that moment, his daughter calls, excitedly sharing that she received excellent grades and wants to celebrate with her mother. Richard speaks with his wife, who confirms the visit. Though hesitant, he agrees. With his fuel running low, Richard stops at a gas station. Wearing dark sunglasses, he steps out, leaving Iris alone in the car. Desperate, she struggles to find a way to escape. Slowly, she maneuvers her hand toward the seatbelt, attempting to free herself. Tilting her body toward the window, she cautiously surveys her surroundings. Just then, a young child approaches the car, evoking memories of her own lost son. Moments later, the child's mother arrives to retrieve them. Richard promptly returns and admonishes Iris, tightening her seatbelt once more. He then conceals his tools behind his shirt and attaches cables to his vehicle in preparation for any unforeseen developments. Outside the car, a police officer approaches and knocks on the window. Though Iris remains unable to speak, Richard hears the knock and steps out. The officer inquires about a missing truck and requests to speak with Iris. Richard assures him that his wife is merely intoxicated but soon finds himself in trouble when the officer notices his expired driver's license. Attempting to deflect suspicion, Richard claims that his wife was once in an accident while intoxicated. However, when the officer questions a wound on his head, Richard hesitates. Meanwhile, Iris manages to slightly open the window, and the officer hears a faint sound coming from inside the car. Sensing something is off, he presses further. Richard fabricates a story about being separated from Iris after the loss of their son, Matto. In a soft whisper, Iris pleads for help, and the officer notices movement beneath Richard's shirt. Just as he attempts to intervene, Richard swiftly attacks him with a concealed cable, leaving the officer paralyzed. With the officer subdued, Richard returns to the car, now soaked in gasoline. At this point, it becomes clear that the injection device is no longer in its original position. It had been inadvertently moved closer to Iris during their journey. Regaining his composure, Richard recounts how he was once confined to bed for 2 months, an experience that nearly drove him insane. Iris tries to appeal to his emotions, warning that his actions will cost him his wife and daughter. But Richard suddenly changes his plan. He now intends to drown Iris, claiming that her time is up. In a final desperate attempt, Iris tries to inject Richard's leg with the medicine but lacks the strength. Seizing control, Richard empties the injection into her, causing Iris to scream in pain. Without hesitation, he retrieves a knife and other equipment, carries them to the boat, and prepares Iris for what he ominously calls the final destination. Overwhelmed by sorrow, Iris breaks down in tears, catching Richard's attention. She instructs him to retrieve Matto's toy boat from her pocket. Complying, he does so, but in that moment, Iris seizes the knife and stabs him. As Richard struggles to regain control, she deliberately moves the boat, causing his weapon to slip from his grasp and sending him tumbling into the water. Without hesitation, Iris grabs the weapon and fires at Richard. Shortly after, the boat begins to sink, and with her body still not fully under her control, she is dragged into the water along with it. Moments later, the toy boat resurfaces, floating on the water. Emerging from the depths, Iris struggles to swim toward the shore. On the opposite side, she notices Richard has also managed to reach land. With the last of her strength, she moves toward him and utters her final words, "Thank you." And thus, the story comes to an end. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.